And I'm Guy. And what do I usually say? This is your home for everything Alberta Independence, broadcasting live 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Let's get it started. I can't believe I just did that.
Clearly it's Saturday, but thank you so much for joining us today on a Saturday, for giving us the most important thing you have, that is your attention and your time. Please do subscribe, because it's what helps us out the most, helps us get interviews as well with very interesting people that we're continuing to try to get out there. There's one coming out tomorrow with John, Alberta Patriot, or talking to Albertans, if any of you know who that is, with his big blue, beautiful flag, as he calls it. Also, we read all your comments. We do divide the show in sections. After each section, we read all your comments, so let us know what you're thinking. But we do prioritize super chats. And speaking of starting the show with Glenn Gunn, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Very generous.
Well, that's the first time we've ever had a super chat before the show, so thank you.
But he does say, I'm passionate, not nuts. I got educated. Thank you for what you do. But that's because he wrote a whole thing that I'm going to read now. Glenn Gunn says, hi again. Hello. Says, I watched a very good speech from Ezra from Rebel News. Not that he is correct. He really was. He made his points clear points. When you hear Carney talk with a clear, when have you heard Carney talk with a clear vision? We now have two of the biggest freedom-like movements, Juno News and Rebel News. There are many other solos. Rebel will be able to advertise freely as a third-party advertiser. That is just the start. We have warm weather now. Good. And we did hear that it was snowing earlier this week, but apparently it has been thawing. So that's good. Hold on. It says, can you imagine? Alberta sleeps during the winter. Wait till the bear wakes up. Alberta is the bear.
Yeah, and Rebel News is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I don't agree with them on every issue, but I don't agree with content creators on every issue either. That being said, they are on the side of Alberta independence. They are the only really national independent news network that is on the side of Alberta independence. They have a ton of people working for them in Alberta that are firmly on the side of Alberta independence. On this particular issue, Rebel News is going to be absolutely crucial.
And they have been able to prove how much the mainstream media, the paid off, subsidized mainstream media in Canada is, and the subsidization of that mainstream media by the federal government, which continues to just help push the narrative. And they have been imperative throughout the years to show that, fighting for the inclusion in the debates, being able to bring in independent media into the debates, and Juno News as well, and being
I'll say something about Juno News really quick. And Juno News isn't necessarily on the side of Alberta independence like Rebel News is. Rebel News has really staked out a flag on the side of independence, and I'm glad they have. Juno News, I think they're going to do fair reporting, but a lot of their personalities are nationalist personalities. That being said, they do give fair coverage, and I do appreciate that.
That's what I was going to say.
That's all we can really ask for.
Yeah, and that is exactly, I mean, comparatively to what the narrative from the mainstream media already is, it's very important to have independent media sources that at least are covering in a fair light what's happening with the Alberta independence movement, instead of just using essentially insults to talk about the movement and what's happening and the people within the movement as well.
Well, and Kean Bexby is from Alberta, so who knows? Maybe he'll end up being firmly on the side of Alberta independence. I really hope so. We did profile Juno News, and I was surprised that they were so nationalist in their coverage of things. That being said, it is extremely fair coverage, how the news used to be, or how journalism should be.
Exactly. And Glenn also says, sorry for the rant. No, we always say, let us know what you're thinking. And you did exactly that. And that is what makes a live show. So thank you so much for letting us know what you're thinking. And Rafa, you don't hate me that much, because I did pause my whole Spanish channel so I can concentrate on this for a while and I can get my bearings straight, especially because now we're going to be pushing out even more content. So expect that coming your way next week. But thank you so much, Rafa. He has been our longest supporter and our most, I would say, biggest supporter at this point, because he has been here since the start. He was the only one sending us any kind of chats and talking to us while we were streaming when there were one or two people in the room. So always thank you so much to Rafa.
Well, a lot of people may not know that we actually do have two stations. One channel is in Spanish. The other one's about Alberta independence in English. But with Alberta independence being so crucial, especially on the run up to October 19th, we are going to pause our Spanish station so we can really focus in on Alberta independence.
Yes, but Rafa says, hello, happy weekend, and happy weekend to you and to everybody else. Hope things are going well for everybody. And he asks, do you still collaborate with WDW Pro? that I know of, yes, hopefully, yes. It's every 2 weeks, so I should be coming on next Thursday. It's every other Thursday. If you don't know who WDW Pro is or who they are, they have a website called That Park Place, and they mostly focus on the insanity that is wokeness within the entertainment industry. We used to talk a lot more about pop culture. I still do, used to do in my Spanish channel. We'll continue to do so eventually. But they brought us on, and they were kind of the first people that brought us on to speak. So also thank you so much to WDW Pro, because it's been almost a year now that I've been able to go on their panel show and talk about the insanity that is also, and the narrative that is the mainstream.
Well, it is a good platform to go on because it is such a different audience. And especially as Alberta Independence starts getting a lot of coverage around October 19th and into the summertime, hopefully that conversation comes up on that show and they do know that we're covering it. So
yeah, and I do try to continue to bring it up each time I can. And I do mention each time that we are focusing on Alberta Independence on our channel now. So, and hold on. Glengun says, that will be incredible when the bear wakes up, I hope. You mean Don Adelaide hello says, hi guys. And Edward says, Rafa. I'll take that as a hello, Edward. And David Bird says, happy Saturday, Nat and Guy. And thank you to everybody that is here, and hello.
And hopefully I don't lose my bearings too much. I lost it right in the beginning of the show. I completely forgot. I got a little bit of blood taken today. So
nothing serious.
Nothing serious. Just some regular tests. But yeah, I might be a little bit lightheaded. That being said, plus we had a huge interview earlier. That interview went absolutely fantastic. I think we finally got our footing underneath us when it comes to interviews, because the first two were a little bit rough going. Not on the guest part, on our part. Yeah.
But that should be coming out next Sunday. Then Wednesday we also have an interview. So interviews will usually, if we have enough, come out Wednesdays and Sundays, and then content throughout the week.
Yeah.
Okay,
let's get into
Glenn Gunn says, thank you for reminding me. Glenn Gunn says, hit the like, and it really does help get the stream out there and get us into the algorithm.
Well, yeah, and I have noticed if we are able to reach 100 likes on a stream, the next day, the algorithm really pumps it out and almost doubles the views.
Oh, Troglodyte has your diagnosis. Troglodyte says, blood tested positive for Alberta freedom. Positive for freedom, for sure. But also, interestingly, here it's a lot easier to get blood work and anything you need done.
Everything is easy to do here when it comes to medical things. I literally walked down a couple blocks and that's all it took.
Yeah, because there's labs all over the place, and they're not expensive as hell, as many people would think, because they say, oh, it's private, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's not as crazy as people think. But speaking of freedom, let's start with Stay Free Alberta and all the updates that there are regarding the petition and the movement.
Yeah.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
Starting with, from Stay Free Alberta, say, quote, thank you for your donations yesterday that are bringing your voice to government. Yesterday, we had a record-breaking grassroots contributions help fuel the last push to collect signatures. Every day counts now. Have the courage to ask others you meet to chip in even $20. I know it feels awkward to ask, and it's okay. And it's okay to ask, as we are funded by small everyday donations like yours yesterday. Let's go.
Yeah, and a lot of the Alberta movements that do need to get donations so they can kind of mount a campaign against the federal government coming in the summertime can't take donations from Americans or foreign donations because it's illegal through Elections Canada. So it really does need to be Canadians that are donating this. They don't want to leave any holes for the federal government to say we're being funded by foreigners, and that, yeah.
Exactly. But it's good to see that people are supporting and are donating, especially because finishing as the petition time finishes and the signature collection finishes, even though the threshold has been reached, the next phase, I would say, is even more important, because it is the campaigning, it is the education before the referendum itself. And there's still so many people out there that have doubts, that are not sure, that maybe don't even know that it's happening, that have worked almost 24/7, so they can't get really involved. And during the campaign will be that time to be able to answer a lot of those questions and be able to continue to talk about the benefits of Alberta becoming independent.
Well, yeah, up to this point, there wasn't a lot of money needed. We need to get the petitioners out there. We knew there was at least 1/3 of people that lived in Alberta that were going to sign that petition, or at least that's what we hoped. And it looks like that's the case. The next phase is really convincing that middle third, or even that far third, that typically wouldn't vote for independence independence or is on the fence. And that's going to take a little bit of fun. So hopefully things come together for not only Stay Free Alberta, but the other organizations trying to educate in this space.
Exactly. And we'll continue to try to highlight both the organizations, the campaign, the different campaigns that there will be, because we did hear from Marty up north that there's several different organizations being formed to be able to push forward in different ways.
Yeah.
The campaign and the education. And even as Glenn Gunn mentioned, Rebel News being also instrumental in that, and being able to put out information, true information, and counter the mainstream media narrative. So it's a kind of an effort from everybody. But pausing, hold on. Thank you so much to Smile to Everyday Life. And once again, I really love that username says, thank you again for what you do. There is no reasonable reason why anyone would want to stay in Canada with the political parties the way they are. And thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And yes, smile to life every day.
Well, hopefully we can convince them to stay in Canada a little bit longer, because a lot of people are ready to pull the parachute and go to Mexico or move to Canada. Hopefully they stay within Canada and move to Alberta to vote for independence and use the United States as that safety net, just in case the vote doesn't go the way we're all hoping. Okay, let's go into the next article here.
Yes, because the irony does not stop in Canada. So Alberta, leave as soon as you can, because Brian Gertison says, quote, same guy that called the Freedom Convoy the January 6th of Canada, same guy is part of the government who has been found guilty now twice for violating the charter. I really can't stand these frauds. And yes, they were making a whole hoopla about the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms turning 44.
Well, and it's not just that it's turning 44. I put this in the Stay Free Alberta section because it's very important to know the campaign strategies the nationalists are going to use. And they're going to lean on Canadian history. They're going to lean on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's important that we really point out the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is only there as long as the federal government wants to respect it. As soon as they don't like what's happening, they'll just take away your rights with the notwithstanding clause, just like they did with the truckers' protest.
And again, it's not like there's not examples of that. And yes, they want to lean on history, which they continue to try to erase. They want to lean on the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which they trampled all over and continue to change here and there because they have those notwithstanding clauses. So, hypocrites.
Oh, that is cool. That is neat. The pen breaks just add so much to the story. It feels like it's a very real world thing. I just can't believe this is what we get to do for work. This is so cool. I've just spent like so many hours of my life learning about all this and trying to apply it, and it's just it's cool. You get to see the history with your own eyes. I think it's helped shape Canada's history over the entirety of my lifetime. With the Charter celebrating its 44th anniversary, the Canada that I know has been defined in many ways by the existence of the Charter. And what's exciting to me is that it's not about any one government. It's not about any one moment in time. It's about some pretty basic ideals that help define what Canada is. The idea that everyone's equal before the law. The idea that even the government who's responsible for making laws is subject to them. There is no special treatment.
Okay, and that's just a taste of what we're going to see coming. The Canadian government, not only over the last 10 years, but for quite a while now, has been trying to erase their own history by tearing down statues, by completely disrespecting certain demographics within the population, saying they want diversity, but they don't want diversity of thought. And the thing is, they're going to try to lean in now heavy on their history, like they were always for the historical vision of Canada and what Canada was. They're going to pitch that against Alberta independence. And we see what they did with the flag. The flag was really taken over by the Freedom Convoy and the truckers and the Conservative Party. Somehow Mark Carney was able to take that from Poilievre and the Conservatives and make it a national socialist flag. That's exactly what they're going to try to do with Canadian history, and they're going to try to guilt Albertans and tell the rest of Canada Alberta is a traitor. They want to destroy this lovely history of ours. They were destroying the lovely history for well over a decade now.
Yes, and even inventing new history and coming up with things that never even happened. Or did we forget the Mass Graves hoax that they still have not been able to prove, but hinged and threw a boatload of money from taxpayers as well. So the irony, hopefully, does not get lost within the conversations. And it's always interesting to me that, for example, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada is such a young document as well. And they've already continuously tried to trample it and abuse it. Exactly.
They've abused a document they're trying to lean on that only has a 44-year history. Can you not?
That's probably younger than a lot of you guys.
Can you not respect it for at least 44 years before you break it?
Or the same age as some of us. But freedomcalendar.net does have a lot of streams scheduled for next week, and we do continue to suggest that you go follow Freedom Calendar for the amazing work that he's been doing by being able to go to the town halls, go to any public speaking event that has to do with Alberta independence and show the rest of the world what's going on. And especially for people like us that are outside but are able to look in. Thank you so much to Freedom Calendar.
And this is a heavy schedule for him. This is becoming almost like a full-time job, 4 days a week, plus he has to do the prep, plus he has to do the travel. I mean, this is what makes a grassroots movement possible outside of even Alberta. He keeps us informed, and we're in Mexico because we already voted for our independence and left Canada under the Trudeau regime. But he said he's been having people from Sweden, from all over the place watching these events. And we're very lucky as a grassroots movement. We can broadcast these events as we do with such high quality. So thank you to Freedom Calendar. And if you're wondering where to find him, just go to freedomcalendar.net or on his X account.
Or on YouTube, Freedom Calendar, where you can see the streams as well. And it's good also to see that there are a lot of things happening during this next few weeks, because again, it is going to be that crucial turning point and pivot. Sorry, we used to do a lot of Charlie Kirk stuff. Turning point towards the next campaigning season that will be during the summer. And I think it will be also, it's good that it is great that it will be during the summer, because more people both are home, but are also able to go outside and be outside and not freeze to death.
Yeah.
Rise of Alberta also says, quote, Alberta independence is a choice between becoming Dubai 2.0, don't love Dubai, or Venezuela 2.0. One path unleashes our prosperity, ambition, and resource wealth. The other keeps Alberta inside a declining Canada that is embracing socialism and normalizing decline, and essentially trapped inside of an insane asylum.
Well, and yeah, this is very true. Canada could become Venezuela 2.0, meaning they had great oil infrastructure and they were a leading producer and they have the oil assets, but they let it deteriorate over time. They're just now starting to rebuild it with what's happened under Trump and stuff like that. But their oil infrastructure, it was in absolute ruins. And that's what's going to happen to Alberta. It's going to get smaller and smaller through regulation and lack of investment under federal Canadian rule. This is why it's so important for Alberta to break free from Canada so it can break free from those regulations.
And I do like that comment from Nunes as you saying Havana or Dubai. and yeah, I mean, it already is starting. I mean, Canada already kind of looks like that now.
Well, and a lot of these big oil-bearing nations have no taxes on their people, and this is something we really need to look at once Alberta does get its independence. So this duality of looking at where Venezuela is and where Dubai is, even though they both have oil assets, it's really up to the people of Alberta to choose on October 19th.
And then afterwards, as involved citizens with knowledge to be able to forge the new nation that will come up and hopefully continue to make it and continue to be a citizen-led initiative once it comes to the Constitution and deciding things like taxes and deciding things like what sort of currency you're going to have, what's going to happen with the pension plan. All of that should be and should involve all the citizens as well.
And a lot of the projects we talked about earlier, whether it was the Alberta Prosperity Project or they have the Centurion Project, the Centurion Project specifically is trying to educate and get people politically active, not just for the vote on October 19th, but they want to build in real citizen-led leadership when Alberta does get its independence, and to continue that education going forward. So you really do build a strong class of citizenry and that are very politically aware.
Exactly. Speaking of that as well, Marty Up North says, and has an interesting quote here that I'm going to have to censor a little bit, but Marty Up North says, quote, "You're going to look back one day and wish you had told more people to go F themselves."
Yeah,
unknown.
At a certain point, this is what Alberta's going to have to do. They're going to have to say the rest of Canada can go F itself, because I really do think National Conservatives and possibly Poilievre are going to, maybe in the summertime, turn against Alberta independence. And we have to stand strong and be willing to take the gloves off, much like Pierre Poilievre didn't. He did all these interviews. He did it when at the point he was already going to lose. He should have done it during the election when he could have actually won.
During the campaign season, when it made sense to go talk to all these podcasters, when people were screaming at him he should go do it, and he decided not to, that he had to stay in Canada.
Yeah, let's take the example from Pierre Poilievre and not make the same mistakes he did by not taking the gloves off.
Says, even though I have a very outgoing personality, I'm actually an introvert. kind of like the guy. When I need to, and myself as well, when I need to re-energize, I seek solitude, not sit at home and read a book. Solitude, real solitude, the kind of solitude that can only be found in the wilderness.
Well, and Marty actually started his channel and his journey with hiking videos and things like that because that was his passion. But a lot of the stuff he's talking about hiking here, I think really does relate on a deeper level to Alberta independence.
Yeah, when you hike alone, solo, a lot of solitude and boredom, a bit of fear, and it's definitely not for everyone. And even last night, I was, feeling it. Like I was, after 3 days on my third night, I was kind of hoping there'd be somebody at this campsite, but there wasn't. And so that's a bit of a downer. Like I was looking forward to maybe just, somebody else and having a chat. So then you sit by the fire by yourself and you occupy yourself with tasks. And it's the same thing this morning. I mean, I woke up and it was raining all night and I knew everything was going to be wet, but you just break down the tasks in your head. First I got to get up, I got to put on my boots, I got to see what's wet, I got to gather some wood, I got to start the fire, filter some water, make a coffee, start packing.
And pause it for a second. And man, I don't know if it's just me, but a lot of this I can relate to Alberta, whether it's people that are blue collar workers working in an oil patch or in an underground mining. I've worked both those kind of jobs. They can be very isolating jobs and you just have to look at one little task at a time.
Out of schedule, you occupy yourself, it fights the boredom, and then you make that fire and then you stare in that fire and you contemplate life is what I do, and then I have this thing where I always talk about how long it takes me to stop caring about what's going on in the real world, right? Like usually like at the trailhead, driving up to the trailhead, I'm always like, why am I doing this again? And then I get here and then it's okay. And then I start walking. And usually in the past, it used to take me half a day to hit that I don't give a shit moment, where you're sitting in the dirt and you're uncomfortable and it's okay. Now I get to that I don't give a shit moment, usually an hour within, after an hour of leaving my car, I'm in that I don't give a shit moment, which is where I'm at right now. Like I've been out, this is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This is my fourth day out here and I'm kind of wet and miserable. I got a fire going, I got a coffee, I don't give a shit. Cheers, folks.
And I will say this, I think that's where some of us are. Within Alberta independence, we started walking and we already don't give a shit. We're ready for independence. But then there's another large portion that once they see this thing is really going to go through and there's really going to be a vote on October 19th. Right now, I'm specifically talking about young people. Right now, I think Canada has really broken them down where they really just don't believe. And they're so consumed by what's going on outside that when they really look at Alberta independence, when that vote is finally going to be there in front of them, they're really going to start giving a shit or not giving a shit and checking yes for independence.
And for the future, not just of themselves, but of everybody that comes after them. And actually thinking that there are people that might come after them because currently in Canada, many young people particularly don't feel like they have a future, so they cannot have a family to continue down that line and to continue down with that future. If you think that you will have a future and prosperity, then you can start thinking about, well, what happens after myself? You can get out of yourself and look forwards toward a future that maybe doesn't even include yourself at some point, but the lineage and the line that you can leave behind and the legacy that you can leave behind as well, that has been robbed from so many young Canadians.
Well,
too.
Also talking about waking up in the morning, everything's wet. I just got to gather some firewood, make the fire, make the coffee. That's what it's going to probably kind of feel like after we gain our independence. There is going to be a lot of positive emotions there, but there's going to be a lot of work ahead of us to really gather the firewood, make the coffee, do the next step. So,
and not forgetting that.
Thanks to Marty for putting that out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And making everybody think a bit more, or at least you, because you took it that way. But it's funny because it also reminded me, even though I might not look it, I used to do a lot of like survival, camping, instinct, hiking, river rafting, etc., bouldering. I used to do all that, not so much in Canada, but here in Mexico. So and in the States. So it reminded me of my camping days. And even though I might not look it, everything I used to have was pink, as you can see here. Still, a lot of things are pink, but they used to call me Camping Barbie when I was young. I do miss that. Maybe we should go camping one day. Stream with Starlink from somewhere.
It's going to have to be after October 19th because I think every day from here to October 19th, we're absolutely consumed with Alberta independence.
Yeah. If we ever leave, it's just going to go to Alberta, interview people, and then come back.
Well, we barely have time for the
they don't
grocery
arrest
store
us.
between live streams and edited videos and stuff like that.
True.
Okay, let's
Now
go.
we'll read your comments and then we'll go into Alberta politics.
Yeah.
Glenn Gunn says, real thinkers are really hard to find. I think, therefore I am. And Troglodyte says,
Well, I don't know if they're so hard to find. They don't really exist. And it's up to a nation to build that in through the education system. And I hope Alberta independence does start building that in. A lot of other nations like to have weak and dumb citizens because they're easy to manipulate. That's not what we want in Alberta once we have independence.
And luckily, there are enough people, I think, within Alberta that understand that, and enough people that have, for example, homeschooled or look at the benefits of homeschooling, and maybe even translate that into public education system and get rid of the curriculum and the syllabus that is currently in the Canadian public system, because it's insane. Troglodyte says, cogito ergo something or other. And yes, exactly. I think, therefore I am. Funnily enough, I took Latin in university and I failed so bad I got 5 out of 100 just because I put my name at the top. I had a tutor and everything, but don't ever try to study Latin. It is impossible. I thought I had a leg up because I knew Spanish. It is not the same. Primores007 says, Hola Nat y guys, still in Victoria, BC, still can't wait to return to Calgary. And I bet, but hopefully you're not being treated too badly over there in Victoria.
Well, Victoria and Vancouver are both beautiful, beautiful cities. Some of the most beautiful cities in the world. I really do think so. But the ideology absolutely destroys it. And just interacting with people, you just have this feeling of this underlying extremely progressive liberal wokeness.
There's also like a dread that pulls everybody down. Everybody's miserable and you can feel it as soon as you get there. I went there last September after we had already moved here, and it felt like coming back to dread, to an insane asylum. Glenn Gunn says, this summer we'll go crazy, wait for a stampede, the world will be watching.
Oh,
And
absolutely. And that's the time to shine. And I really do hope Freedom Calendar does some outdoor live events.
Yes. Glenn Gunn also says, I believe the world will back Alberta. And at least part of the, if not most of the continent of America will back Alberta, because they are within that shield of the Americas that was formed by the U.S. government.
Yeah, this has kind of been coming up in our conversations with our interviews, with the ones we haven't kind of released yet. And you'll see it as they come out, that we were talking about a lot of the people that have already left Canada are the people that are most fervent in support of Alberta independence because of what Canada did to them and forced them out. And we really look at Alberta independence as being the way to save traditional Canadian values and stuff like that, because the rest of Canada has already turned its back on those values,
Real values,
and Alberta. But what else is coming up in these conversations is there's a through line that a lot of prominent people within Alberta independence, including myself and probably you as well, I haven't talked to you about it, but I really do think national conservatives are going to turn on Alberta independence at a certain point. And I think Poilievre's going to be the guy they tap to do that.
Mm-hmm. Glenn Gunn says about, I forget his name, the guy that was looking at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. He's an asshat. That was being nice.
Yeah. And
And
that's just pure propaganda. They're putting it out there right now.
And Troglodyte says, like the trucker convoy, the world is watching Alberta, give them hope and courage. And exactly. And today we were kind of talking about the Freedom Convoy as well during the interview that we were doing, and really looking at the parallels and looking at it almost as a continuation of the one shred of hope that is still there that kind of was built through the being able to do the Freedom Convoy and then seeing the reaction from the federal government, and that strengthening the resolve in people that truly do care about freedom and will fight for it.
Well, a lot of the leadership that was in the Freedom Convoy are now within the Alberta independence movement. It's absolutely fantastic to have them here because there are real parallels between the two.
Mm-hmm. Sam says no special treatment. That's BS. And yeah, you touched on a good point there that I was going to say and then I forgot. But yeah, saying, it means that there's no special treatment in the Charter of Rights. Of course there's special treatment. Look at what's happening between just that generalized diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is completely the opposite of what they say those words mean, that has been embedded within Canadian institutions and completely captured Canadian institutions, that now there is no real justice system, there is no real education system, there is nothing other than ideology coming from the federal government on down.
Yeah.
And if you don't listen to it, then you get treated not the same and not equally. Troglodyte says, Stampede to Independence. Exactly. Oh, that would be a good campaign.
We need to have a real campaign for the Calgary Stampede. And that's a perfect slogan there. Now, we shouldn't
I don't know if they would like a parallel thing.
Well, we can say it on our own individual shows, and what the hell are they going to do? That being said, we don't want to, slogans are good, especially when they're in memes and things like that, but we don't want to overdo them like Pierre Poilievre did. Every time he gave a speech, it was slogan, 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 and then my talking points. And it would just seem very robotic after a while.
Mihai Sma, I guess, hello, says, Guy, if you want to be considered relevant, you must stop talking nonsense. USA is not the safety net. It's the only way to make Alberta freedom real. And I don't really understand what they mean.
No, I don't either. And I look at
if you want to clarify, go ahead.
I look at it as a safety net. And I don't know if you're a regular watcher of the show, but I very often talk about the great migration that is currently happening to Alberta from a lot of conservative nationalists that are disenfranchised with National Canada and see absolutely no hope because Carney has a majority government for the next 3 years and possibly a supermajority if he gets enough floor crossers. So I really see Alberta as the way, the light, and the hope. And I do see Mexico or the United States as a safety net for people that are going to migrate to Alberta. And statistically, hundreds of thousands of people left Canada last year for the United States, 41,000 from BC alone. I'd like to see this year, because we're going to see about the same amount probably flee Canada this year, flee to Alberta and vote for independence rather than to the United States.
So that is kind of, maybe to clarify, that is kind of what you mean, that a lot of the people that are right now, for example, in BC and other provinces, moving in droves to the United States because they see that as the only opportunity they have, maybe to reconsider and consider Alberta and Alberta independence as another way out and bringing their actual talents and their actual freedom-mindedness to Alberta independence and to Alberta to work within the maybe not independence movement, but find opportunities there instead of just moving all of themselves and all of that capital as well to the U.S. first.
And I will say one other thing. I grew up half my life in the States. I was born in Canada and lived about half and half. Now I live in Mexico, but the United States isn't perfect. Every 4 or 8 years, it can be a dramatic shift in ideology. Now, the parties used to be a lot closer together, but now they're so far apart. If a Newsom gets there in 2028, it's going to be far worse than what it was under Biden. And he's going to try to make up for lost time and try to undo everything Trump did. One of the big benefits Alberta has is for the last 93 years, it's voted conservative. They can actually sit down at a table and build a long-term vision for Alberta once it's independent without one government coming in and then the other one coming in and trying to undo everything that the other one did the previous 4 years. So although I do like Trump and the United States, and a large portion of my heart will always be there because I grew up there a long time, I think Alberta needs to be a free and independent country.
Yes. Don Nettelek says, trust me, they will be. Not sure about what, but yes. Glenn Gunn says it's one way, not the right way. We need a big brother, so to speak. And you need the recognition of, if not one of the most important countries in the world to recognize you as an independent country and to kind of bat for you when Carney decides to not have those talks that should be had in a peaceful and understanding manner.
Well, and the United States actually needs Alberta as well because it's a shining example of how they're going to treat Alberta to other countries like Greenland, like Panama, like a lot of other places in the world. If they treat Alberta with respect, have good contracts with them, good trade relations because they're not butting heads ideologically, it really sets an example what it means to be a partner with the U.S. again.
And thank you so much to El Andres Parada, I'm guessing, or El Andres Parada, saying for the $6.99 super chat, saying, I work in Fort McMurray, but I have a place in BC. I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in this. Has anyone talked about or addressed this specifically?
No, but I do know a lot of people. I do know a lot of people in the same situation. I used to work in the mining industry as well as a little bit in the oil industry. And there are a lot of people that do work in Fort McMurray and have houses in British Columbia. I would say, man, it might be time to sell that house, especially with what's happening with DREPA and the 30 by 30 program on a federal level. it's not looking good.
We're not giving financial
No,
or
I'm not
real
giving
estate
financial
advice.
advice whatsoever. But we recently had some other friends that still live in British Columbia that bought a house, and I'm just like, man, now's not the time to be doing that.
And luckily, where they bought, it skirted, like it literally
Just-
avoided the line that had been claimed by the tribes. But I mean, just by even a few street blocks almost.
Yeah.
So it is a worrying situation. And now I am even, not to be mean, but I'm even happier that I didn't put in the effort to try to get a house in BC.
Well, can you read that again? Because they said they worked in Fort McMurray.
Fort McMurray,
Yeah.
but have a place in BC.
Okay, with that, and maybe they're asking this question because this is what I kind of take from that. You're working in Fort McMurray, but your residence is in BC. You should get a residence within Alberta so you can vote in the independent selection, number one. But number two, you're going to be guaranteed automatic citizenship once Alberta gets its independence, or at least I would assume so.
It's not immigration advice, not financial advice. And we're not fully sure either. We'd love to have someone on that we could ask these questions to. And I'm sure they will continue to be debated and discussed as the campaign specifically goes forward as well.
You can continue. I would assume if you're a resident of Alberta, when Alberta gets its independence, you will get citizenship, period.
Hopefully.
That's the way it would have to work now.
Glenn Gunn says a lot of people do this, go for a remote hike. That's Alberta.
Assuming you're a Canadian citizen that with a residency is what I mean.
Says
Okay.
that's Albertan. Yes. Chocolate says one career I was dropped off alone in the BC wilderness doing forestry, isolated in the tough remote coastal forest, real independence. And it really gets you to think.
Yeah, I've worked some very remote jobs, especially in mining. One time we took a little tiny plane to a airport in the middle of nowhere. We got off that. It was like another 5-hour drive on a bus. Then we got off into vans. It was another couple hours in the vans. Then we got onto this like thing with tracks on it, and it carried 20 of us at a time over a glacier. And then we were literally mining in the middle of a glacier with this turquoise lake right there. It was absolutely spectacular. But yeah,
And because you never remember place names, you don't know where it was.
yeah.
So I was going to ask, where was that?
It was the very, very, very northern
I
BC,
assumed.
bordering with the Yukon.
Smile to Everyday Life says, to Life Every Day says, looking forward to camping. And yeah, that season's coming up as well.
Absolutely.
Sam says, heading into an 8-day motorcycle camping trip in BC, May 23rd.
Oh, you're breaking my heart. I had to sell my Harley before we left British Columbia.
Yeah.
Importing a vehicle into Mexico is
impossible.
really hard. And even I wouldn't want to necessarily have one down here, a motorcycle, that being said, because man, people, number one, drive crazy and the roads are insane. You hit a pothole here, you might die.
Yeah. You might end up in the pothole.
Yeah.
Glenn Gunn says, my friend of 45 years that I just talked to will not vote for a free Alberta. He is retired and is going broke. He won't hear my voice of reason. Tomorrow, he is still my friend. And that is a good attitude to have. And it is a heartbreaking attitude to have too. I remember during the Jibby Jab era, I did have a bunch of friends stop talking to me because of my opinions and because I was making them known on the internet about that. And some have apologized since, but some haven't. But I mean, what else can you do?
Right now, that's a two-way street. I think your friend will still be your friend as well. But as the national propaganda really amps up and they try to portray Alberta independence individuals as traitors to the country, nationalists are going to really start buying into that. They always buy into the propaganda, and hopefully they don't push their friends and family members away like they did during the Jibby Jab era, because that was absolutely disgusting. I know people in Alberta independence are not going to push people away, even if they decide to vote different. I don't think that's going to be the same in national Canada or people that are nationalists within Alberta after the propaganda wraps up.
And unfortunately, a lot of people still have that cognitive dissonance and still are not even able within themselves to look at things for what they were during the Jibby Jab era and the 2020 blah, 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 insanity, and still have not even realized what actions they took. And I know it from, again, personal experience. So hopefully you're able to talk and continue the debates and discussions in a reasonable, peaceful manner.
We do have a ton of comments and a lot of people in here, so we may have to come back to the comments. Why don't we read 3 more, and then we're going to go into Alberta politics.
Sorry, I really do like reading the
And
comments.
we try to read all of the comments, but I know once we start reaching around 80 people on a live stream, we're not able to keep up. And
I
then,
will continue to try.
but yeah.
Sam says some folks are immovable, Glenn, and some might come around as well. Again, if you continue to have discussions, if that is appropriate to do. There's some people that just cannot be reasoned with. Glenn Gunn says he got a pension and he just wants to be left alone. Well, if he stays in Alberta, he'll be left alone.
Here's the thing is, it's going to be very interesting. Let's just say hypothetically, Alberta doesn't get its independence. Now, obviously, I hope it does, and I'm really committed to that.
To see that through.
That being said, if they don't get their independence, a lot of people in Alberta that are going to not vote for Alberta independence are going to realize that Mark Carney has been gambling with the CPP or their pension plan. And if they lose a lot of that, they're going to really be kicking themselves in the ass that they didn't vote for an independent Alberta when they had a chance. He's investing in foreign countries and all kinds of other things, taking risky bets with people's retirement.
And a lot of people have no idea what has been going on with the Canadian pension plan. And I am working hard to try to get someone to speak on it here for an interview as well. Troglodyte says, the pioneering spirit that built this once great country is still alive in Alberta, but has been lost by so many. And I would add, has been forgotten by so many. And there's been a lot of ungratefulness for that pioneering spirit, and it has been trodden over and literally stamped by the federal government.
Yeah, but you have that spirit, and you have it in spades because of the mining industry, because of the oil industry, because of the hard-nosed industries that you really have forged in Alberta. And that's the exact kind of mentality you need to forge a new nation. And that's what this vote is. It's not just a vote for a referendum on independence. It's a vote for the vote for the founding of a new nation, and
being able to participate in it as well.
Absolutely. And once that vote's taken and you get your independence, you have the right kind of people there to build a new nation and a strong nation.
And I will say to the citizenry of Alberta, you do have to continue to fight to be able to be included and to continue this citizen-led initiative and be included in that forging of the nation. And it is something that has to be, I think, spoken of more and more, and reminding everybody else about how important it is for the citizens to participate.
Okay, let's go into Alberta politics now.
I was trying to finish my sentence.
I know.
Okay, let's go into Alberta politics, and I'll continue reading your comments after the end of that section.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
I hit myself. Okay.
Getting a little too close to that microphone.
Clearly professionals. The Globe and Mail says, quote, opinion, want to keep Canada together, take a lesson from those who know how it's done, First Nations people.
And again, more propaganda coming out here. You want to keep Canada together, do what the First Nations are doing. The First Nations is going to be used by the national federal government as that weapon. And that's why it's so important that we start really showing the real sentiment of the people in a lot of these tribes. I'm not saying all of them want to vote for independence, but there is a large majority, not of the elites running the tribe, but the actual members in the tribe. The members have gotten the short end of the stick for far too long by the elites in the tribe that have been shoving dollars over fists into their pockets as the federal government gives them billions of dollars. And the members of that tribe want a new deal as well. They want their own independence.
But also keeping Canada together, have we not seen the documents that are coming out of BC of the deals that the First Nations have done with the CCP and with China and with a bunch of other entities that are very interested in the natural resources that have been hindered by federal regulation, but that have been liberated as soon as the First Nations take over, giving it over to others that are interested in them.
And we have a lot of tribal members that watch the podcast, and they always chime in saying, I'm voting for Alberta independence. Most of the people that are members of the tribe are also voting for Alberta independence. We read a letter that a First Nations member wrote named Darren on I think it was the last show or the show before, and he was very clear. Alberta is the way forward for many people within the tribe that have been getting the short end of the stick for far too long. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go into the next post here.
Let's go to Jeff Rath saying, quote, breaking Foothills, Alberta. If Danielle Smith enacts the firearms license regulations set out below, I swear I will never say a bad word about her ever again, which he does quite frequently.
And I love Jeff Rath, and I actually really love Danielle Smith too. I'm not, I was hard on Danielle Smith when I thought she was muddying the waters, but she's cleared that up. She's really helped Alberta independence like no other provincial leader would or could. So thank you to Danielle Smith, and hopefully her and Rath can get on the same page again.
I mean, in a way, I do like when Rath keeps her accountable, because I mean, there should be some figures that do that with politicians as well.
But I'm going to keep her accountable, even if this Firearms Act would be absolutely phenomenal if she did pass it. That being said, if she does something else that derails Alberta independence or something, I'm still going to hold her accountable.
But let's see what it says. Alberta Firearms Act, Firearms Licensing Regulation. 1. Any Alberta resident that possesses a valid Canadian firearms possession acquisition license or restricted firearms possession acquisition license from Canada shall be issued an Alberta firearms license by a licensed Alberta registry. 2. Alberta firearms license shall be the only license required in Alberta to acquire, own, use, and possess a firearm in Alberta. 3. Such license shall be issued for the life of the firearms license holder, subject to only to an order of court of competent jurisdiction.
And just read the beginning of each section.
The
there.
licensee to be a danger to themselves or others. 4. A licensee under this regulation may own and safely use any firearm in their possession, including all firearms listed or scheduled as prohibited or restricted by the Canadian government. 5. Alberta licensed firearm owners are free to use and convey firearms to shooting ranges or other locations as are required for the use of such firearms without further license or permit.
Okay, and that's pretty good. It's really long, so I don't want to go over every section, but I do highly recommend reading this, and we should put a lot of pressure on Danielle Smith to kind of try to enact this. Now, the federal government's going to get a lot of she's going to get a lot of pushback from the federal government, but this would be absolutely fantastic. It would lay out the framework for other provinces to do the same. And that's why Danielle Smith and Alberta is the thorn in the Liberal side. They want to federalize Canada now and take away a lot of provincial sovereignty. And if Danielle really keeps pushing back in the ways that she is, it's very likely the federal government says we're better off just letting Alberta go, even though they give us a lot of money, because then no other province will be able to build a framework and show other provinces how to kind of resist federalization. Now, I don't plan for that because that's best case scenario, but I do like what Danielle Smith is doing with building a safety net for Alberta in case the independence vote doesn't go the way that we want.
And again, just ridings and seats wise and votes wise, if Alberta leaves, there is no conservative rule ever again in Canada. So it would open the path for Liberal reign forever. Well, not until they change something.
Not necessarily. If Alberta leaves and then Quebec leaves, actually Canada turns conservative based upon its seats.
Yeah. But I mean, as of now, it's just Alberta that we're thinking of. But speaking of Smith, the breakdown says, quote, Smith today, quote, if a child needs to be removed from a school environment because they need to learn to self-regulate, let's do that too. You can earn your way into inclusion, but you can earn your way out of it too.
Yeah, I like this policy, but I can see this policy going awry in places like BC or woke provinces.
If we need to bring in a school resource officer, police officer, a social worker, a mental health professional to work with that individual and their families to start getting appropriate behavior, let's do it. If that child needs to be removed from a school environment and have more one-on-one education in a specialized environment because they need to learn how to self-regulate, let's do that too. We're sort of drawing a line that you can earn your way, of course, into inclusion, but you can earn your way out of it too. If we need to bring in
Okay, and I can see how that policy would be good in a common sense province like Alberta, but you put that in a very woke province with a woke school board and a woke education system and say you have a conservative student really pushing back. What, are they going to kick them out of school for not having the right ideology? That's where that can go, but I do like that policy overall. It works in a common sense society.
And that's the thing. Canada has lost most of it, not all its common sense.
Yeah.
And again, I do agree it would work in a common sense, but we have also seen how inclusion has been used to just further turn students crazier and crazier and not let them self-regulate, as she was saying there. And also the inclusion of students or children or people that have those issues and hindering the classroom environment. Again, I worked in 2 different high schools in Vancouver for a while. Also hinders everybody else and turns everybody else into or further pushes whatever is being pushed onto that one child, or that one child wants to push continues to be pushed over. I mean, we've seen the contagion of the trans insanity in schools for far too long.
Let's keep on here.
Nadine Bellwood says, quote, constitutions often rely on a checks and balances model, but what if there's a better way, exploring alternatives to the status quo?
Yeah,
and this is...
We need to talk about what we want in a constitution, whether it's Bruce Party or other people inside of Alberta and the Alberta independence movement. We recently had a discussion with At Homes with the Homes. Absolutely fantastic, and I hope more of this does come up, and we have productive discussions.
Yes, and... okay, I'll say it after.
Let me contrast 2 competing models of constitutions. the one that we have and the one that I want. The one that we have is what I would call the checks and balances model. It's the model that the Americans did the best. It's checks and balances. The real checks and balances, the American system, we have them sort of in the Canadian system, but not nearly as well. But the theory there is that you divide the powers up between parts of the state and they act as checks and balances on each other. Let me contrast two.
Okay, and I will say this. It's important when we go into negotiations with the federal government of Canada, if we have an intern government, that we don't get pushed around and we don't make promises that we have to keep and add things into a future constitution of Alberta, because there won't necessarily be an outline constitution when we go into those interim negotiations.
But I also think a lot of people, especially now, and I've seen some comments both from not our chat, but just people online, but also content creators saying, oh, but we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that, and we shouldn't include X person into the discussion of constitution, or we shouldn't touch on that point, or they're completely wrong on immigration. But those are the debates and the discussions that have to continue to be had and not hindered by people saying, no, that's for sure not going to happen, or this is for sure going to happen, because that is the gift of independence and the gift of being able to form a nation, that you can rethink and look at things in various different ways. Even if you don't agree with certain things, watching the debate and having that discussion is the important part of also knowledge building on how you actually want to move forward. You can't move forward if all you hear or all you want to hear is no, not this, not this, not that. You have to hear the ideas before you shut them down.
Yeah, and I will say most people are leaning towards an American version of the Constitution in 1776 with a few adjustments. But it's nice to have somebody like Bruce Party in that discussion that has such a different radical view. And it really raises some interesting questions about the power of the government, the power of the citizens. How do you reverse that role? Can we do that with a 1776 style constitution? If not, what do we have to add in? What do we have to take away? If too many people are all in agreement, we're really not going to dissect. We're really not going to dissect the American Constitution the way we need to in order to form our own constitution, or maybe even have a radically different idea. What I don't want to see is a Canadian style constitution before Justin Trudeau's father. And that's another stream of thought that's within Alberta independence. And it's important that we hash these out in a constructive and cordial debate manner, I think.
And that's the main thing that I was trying to say, like the cordial discussions and debates and actual thinking on the nuances. And as everybody, as citizens, being able to also participate and wanting to actively participate in that. Otherwise,
well, yeah, and also like what's the non-moving moral foundation the society wants, and how is it that it gets that? Because we're seeing what happens in very progressive liberal societies. The government wants to be that source of morality, and they want to be able to shift that morality at their own whims. So that discussion needs to come in as well. So, okay, let's go into the next
one
post. I can't remember if you like me to call it posts or articles.
Posts. Articles are written.
Oh, okay. Whatever you want.
Says, quote, Alberta is fast-tracking a total redraw of their electoral map to add 91 seats. Premier Smith claims it's about effective representation for a population that grew 20%, but critics are calling out the move to sidestep the independent commission.
And I didn't know what to think about this. We don't live in Alberta. We now live in Mexico. We already fled Canada under Justin Trudeau. We have a lot of people watching. So if you can let me know why you like this or why you don't like this.
A request to increase the number of Alberta seats to 91 was only one suggestion from one member of the Electoral Boundaries Commission. Why only accept that one recommendation and not the majority of the report?
Well, I think we have to realize that this report really was three reports. There was a majority report, a minority report, and a judge's addendum trying to bridge the gap between the two. And when you look through the report, there are many references to the lament that the majority of members had about losing 2 rural ridings. And, you know, being here today shows you exactly why. When you represent a rural riding, as I do, and I'm sure that Minister Scout could talk about it as well, like I represent a riding that has a mid-sized community, Medicine Hat, a large community, Brooks. It's got County Annual, which is a rural community. It's got Bassano, it's got Dutchess, it's got Rosemary, it's got Hamlets, and I've got 3 school boards. There's a complexity when you're dealing in a rural community that is very, very different than if you're in simply a big city like Calgary and Edmonton. So that's what the lament was about, is does a community get so big in size that you end up compromising effective representation? And what I gathered from the judge and from the views of many of the majority of the committee, they didn't want to lose rural communities. But the problem was we've grown 20%.
The seat increase was only 2%. And I think the judge came up with a reasonable solution that we can make sure that we are appropriately representing our large cities without losing rural by just adding 2 seats. And so that's the reason why I think, because that was reinforced multiple times.
And yeah, again, most of the stories we cover, I have an in-depth understanding of what I'm talking about. With this particular story, I don't. As far as I can gather, I like more political power in rural ridings and not condensed into cities as much. And anytime you can take political power away from a city, I typically like it. Otherwise, you can have what happened in British Columbia, where you have Victoria and Vancouver, and those voting blocks determine everything for the rest of a very large province, which most of the interior and the northern half of BC just don't agree with.
But now let's go to comments and see maybe if you let us know what you think.
And we're going to try to get to all the comments, but again, we probably won't. But if you see anything come up about that particular story, I do want you to read it.
Sam says, any money Carnage shows his face at, any money that Carnage shows his face at Stampede. Probably. And Glenn Gunn says he will be there in a secured area. And Sam says he'll be there with Lukasics.
Yeah, you have a little pancake breakfast with very specific people invited to it.
Troglodyte says, white cowboy hat flipping pancake, like a feminine hygiene product, I will have to say.
Oh, and him and Danielle Smith had a photo op at one of the Calgary Stampedes, because I use it for the thumbnails quite often. I really hope she snubs them this time.
Yeah, Glenn Gunn says, like Justin Trudeau, if he's there with Danielle, it will blow up everything, or low up everything, I guess. Sam says she's pushing his pathways, carbon capture nonsense ish, and we'll see if she continues to do so as, again, the independence movement gains more and more, because it'll become further and further unpopular.
Yeah, and people are starting to realize, especially because of Alberta independence, there are so many regulations and strings attached to these MOUs and pipeline projects, mining projects, whatever it is. We don't really want them. We want to break free from this through independence. Because if you can do that, all that money stays within Alberta and you can really reinvest it. And also, when you lower all those regulations, money is just going to flood in, and you're going to have so much money and so many projects flooding in. You're going to have to pick which ones you want to approve and which ones you don't, because there's just going to be too many.
Troglodyte says, where 100% of BC is claimed by the First Nations with overlapping land claims, this will get ugly. Uglier, I would even say, but
and it's the UN is the puppet master behind all this, and a lot of people don't realize this. I've seen a lot of comments saying, "Oh, it's not the UN, it's the First Nations." We've been following this story in South America, Central America. For years, the same thing's going on. They're adopting this UN law into the government, letting it lay dormant, and then they want to enact it on a very small scale basis so they can set the precedent and nobody notices. BC is the first one really expanding it in dramatic fashion, but all these other countries, if it's successful in BC, they're going to take a run at it too. All the dots have already been connected.
Yes, and lined up, I will say too. Albat Twitch, I will say. All good common sense Canadians, welcome in Alberta. Thank you.
Yeah.
And as it should be, but again, after Alberta gains its independence, be careful with those that start seeing the success of Alberta. And even though they fought to stay in Canada and keep Canada united, as they see that Alberta does better, watch out for those that will move there just for the economic benefits, but that didn't support the whole thing from the beginning.
Well, as Carney drives Canada off that economic cliff, it's hard to immigrate to the United States. It's not the easiest country to immigrate to. Maybe if you get a Newsom in, he'll just allow all kinds of illegal immigration. But under a Trump and a common sense government, they have a very strict immigration system. So a lot of Canadians, once they realize there's no economic future with Mark Carney in Canada, are going to say, okay, let's go to Alberta. We should get automatic approval because they used to be part of Canada. And you really want to make sure you don't get flooded with liberal Canadians that are going to completely change the voting demographic and try to turn Alberta into what Canada is going to become.
Mm-hmm. Sam says, run into a couple in the parking lot today with Ontario plates. They've had it with the East and are here to stay.
Oh,
good.
Fantastic to hear. And like everybody thinks Quebec and Ottawa, it's all completely progressive liberals. No, there are a lot of disenfranchised conservatives there that are fleeing for the United States, but now it looks like they're fleeing for Alberta, and that is the best move they can make, especially if they're going to vote for independence.
And Albert Twitch says, nice. Yeah, I've been seeing a few more Ontarian plates around.
Go figure. Well, hopefully Mark Carney's not trying to have a bunch of implants come there before the election.
But and again, having those debates and discussions, I think, is important, even with just people on the ground, because you can get a lot of insight into what's happening just by speaking to each other, which has been lost. And again, speaking of the drain that is Vancouver, nobody talks to each other. Don Nadalek says, to my previous comment, which you didn't understand, pipelines to the USA, if in jeopardy, is national energy issue, ergo national security issue. I think maybe he was talking to somebody else.
Oh, okay.
But okay. But and I agree.
Yeah, I do like the pipelines to the United States, and I haven't read through everything, so I'm wondering if Danielle Smith if there's going to be less regulations on those pipelines, and I would hope so. With these Canadian pipelines, there's so many strings that come attached with them that you're going to be putting your own oil industry out of business. Not with the regulations that are on there in the beginning of the agreement, but after 5 years, more regulations automatically kick in with these contracts.
But Twitch says people are much more reasonable when it's no longer possible to be comfortable. Carney's managed decline.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they'll realize real quick, I would say. Well, I mean, no, they still haven't realized, but maybe once there's that comparison that Mirror put up with Alberta being independent versus Canada, and they have it right there, maybe more people will wake up. But again, what kind of people will wake up?
Yeah, and we do have to be very aware right now what happened in Hungary. A lot of people are looking at the globalists and the direction they're going, and they're trying to use right-wing populism and put it on that skin suit right now. So I wouldn't necessarily surprise me if Mark Carney tries to take a little bit of a turn right before Alberta independence to act like he's not such a progressive liberal that literally made the architecture for all this green energy climate BS.
A 2.0 says, if your friends are not voting for independence, then vote early and keep your friends busy so they don't vote. Not election advice or anything, but that's what A 2.0 said.
And Carney may try to keep the oil industry and the mining industry busy by giving out remote contracts or asking corporations to give out remote contracts so that they don't have access to those voting booths. So that's something we really do need to talk with the oil rigging community as well as the mining community. Anybody that works camp jobs.
Glenn Gunn says, my Alberta will be saved by Albertans. You didn't see what I have seen in Alberta. Paul Brandt got it right. And
okay,
yes,
read a few more comments. I'm going to use the restroom, and then we're going to go into
you don't have to say where you're
Alberta
going.
Personalities.
You can say, I'll be right back.
Don't cut me off. Come on.
Sam says, good on Smith for the firearm license. What a tough move. Good for her. And again, I think it is that necessary pushback that might, again, this is a huge hope, and I don't think it will actually happen, but that might make Carney say, well, Alberta is the one thing that's stopping me from fully going do whatever I want to do and be able to do everything I want to do. So maybe he might just let them go. Again, I think the Emergencies Act or something else, some other insane plan, and the narrative that will continue to be built through the mainstream media is much more likely. But I mean, never say never. Glenn Gunn says Chinese try to influence the oil sands, gone, and also took a hold of most of the mining companies that call themselves Canadian but are fully controlled by China, and with members of the CCP having to be within the board. So a lot of the mining companies that we see also in Latin and South America are Canadian owned, but really Chinese owned deep down.
Okay, 2 more comments, and then we're going to go into Alberta Personalities. We just have one personality today, one article, and then we can go back to comments.
So I kind of wanted to get to that writing thing, but okay. Albert Twitch says, in this case, it's just to deal with the wild kids who were never told no. The Danielle Smith suggesting being able to deal with exactly these same kind of kids.
Well, and I know
and lately there's many more of them.
Well, yeah, I know when she says that, that's what she means. And it's great under Danielle Smith, but when you have a policy in there, if you get somebody like an Inchi or some woke government, or how's Calgary going to use that policy? Because I could see them trying to misuse it. Again, if Alberta gets its independence, that's a fantastic policy because it becomes a common sense country. If other provinces emulate that, though, I can see it going extremely awry in woke districts.
Albert Twitch also says, or simply that weren't raised by anyone at all. And lately, there's more and more of those cases, unfortunately. Troglodyte says, we homeschooled in BC. Public school system is a woke joke. I know, and I'm a huge, after having worked in the school system in Vancouver and within BC, I'm a full supporter of homeschooling. And even when we were coming here to Mexico and looking at the schooling system here, it's also completely messed up, both private and public. So I've made a decision from a long time ago that I will homeschool as well. So
yeah, there's a lot of
I support it a lot.
podschooling and stuff popping up within, and podschooling is homeschooling in the United States as well as Mexico now. Let's go into Alberta Personalities if we can.
Yes. Let me find the button. There we go. It's going to Alberta Personalities.
They need to understand we're leaving and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Just one today, and it's probably the most important one.
yes, and an update as well. Tamara Litch says, quote, "This is a massive win for the good guys. Congratulations, Jeff Evely, and to JCCF Canada. Thank you both for standing up for all of us." And if you don't remember or didn't know, the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedom says that they announced that the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia has struck down the province's sweeping 2025 ban on entering the woods, ruling that the government acted unreasonably and failed to consider the charter rights and values affected by the ban.
Well, and Jeff did a fantastic job because he made fantastic videos that, number one, went viral, and then he intentionally got a ticket, meaning he went right next to a ranger station and went into the woods so he can guarantee he got a ticket so he could challenge it in court. He did Canada an absolute huge favor. We're going to talk again about this article later on the Canada and the World section, but go back up to the top. This is the Alberta Personality section, and it's not just Jeff that we're profiling here. I really wanted to profile Tamara. Yeah, she's absolutely fantastic. And the fact that Alberta has her as really one of the voices and leaders of Alberta independence is crucial. She really represents a lot of what happened and standing up against the federal government when it came to the truckers convoy. So thank you to her, and thank you to Jeff.
Yes, and again, seeing that parallel between the Freedom Convoy and the current Alberta independence movement and the follow-through line that continues, and I do think a lot of people were awakened to fight for freedom during the Freedom Convoy, and then by seeing what the federal government was capable to do, also helped switch and turn a lot of people onto what it has been doing for the longest time within Alberta as well. And the fact that Tamara Litch is now also speaking on Alberta independence and her experiences individually in dealing with the justice system and the Canadian, both federal and even provincial governments in different provinces is, I think, invaluable to many people.
Well, and as
internationally too.
As Alberta starts getting a lot of pushback from the federal government, she's the perfect person to be speaking up because she was so abused by the federal government. A lot of people in Canada aren't just going to take the federal government's word, especially when Tamara is going to be speaking up against it. She does have a new podcast called House Arrest. It's absolutely fantastic. She's had some really great guests on there. She had the gentleman from the Centurion Project on there that really gave me an in-depth understanding of what they're trying to do.
And again, also thanks to Jeff Evely for also standing up and wanting to willingly get that ticket to highlight the ridiculousness and the insanity of what the governments want to continue to do. And again, the ban was not just, I mean, yes, in that particular case in Nova Scotia, but in many different provinces because of poor forest management and poor forest management tactics that they have not wanted to employ. They have essentially allowed for forest fires to spark up and even letting them go on even a bit further than they should have had to go on because, in my opinion, they wanted to make a point.
It's not just bad forest management. They're not doing controlled burnings. They're not cleaning it up. But other things I've been finding out, they're dumping large amounts of glyphosate all over the Canadian forest, which are drying out the forest and creating forest fires. And a lot of people are like, well, why would they be doing that? This helps them with their climate change agenda and all their green policies. When you have massive forest fires in Canada every single year. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go into a few comments and then just a few though, because we were just there. And then
my favorite part is gone.
And then we're going to go into national politics as it's related to Alberta. And there's quite a bit related to Alberta this time.
Okay. Glenn Gunn says, in short, we are the most regulated and best in the world for gun regulations. And Sam says, not just in BC, about the First Nations and the... no, not the First Nations, about the public school system. Yes, it's Canada-wide.
Oh, yeah, Canada, absolutely. And it's seeping into Alberta a lot, especially with Calgary being that foothold for the NDP right now.
Albert Twitch says, your best bet is always educating your own kids and taking also taking on that responsibility that I think the government continues to want to strip away and strip parental rights away from the true parents of their children and saying, no, we will educate your children. You are just the companion. And that was even brought up in a court in BC when the whole pronoun issues were happening. And I forget his name, but that gentleman that we were not allowed to speak about got sanctioned by the court for wanting to call his own child the proper pronouns, not the pronouns by the insane left. He was told you can be a companion to your child, but you're not allowed to parent them. And that is, I think, the direction they want to head in.
It would be absolutely fantastic if Alberta, once it gets its independence, can really focus on birth rates and trying to get that up, meaning we can have industries with high enough paying jobs where one person can support a household, so it's easier to do homeschooling and a lot of other things. Right now, it's the general consensus, and especially the Western world, that there's no way to reverse birth rates. I think there definitely is. And I think a big part of that is making sure that one income can support a family. That's the way it used to be. Birth rates were very good back then.
And I'll just quickly read all the Glenn Gunn ones and then we'll go continue on. He says, I had to say gun with two N's. Look up gun Alberta. I'm originally a white guy from Scotland. I will not say sorry. Good, you shouldn't have to. Troglodyte says, the electoral maps are nuts. Urban commies versus conservative rural areas that actually do productive work.
Yeah.
To kind of going into the whole electoral writing and mapping.
Yeah, and I want to see more and more. There needs to be an effort to really have people live rurally. There's this big effort of having a lot of immigration and packing these people into cities, and it creates voter blocks because it's easy to propagandize people when they're all lumped together in one place.
And Wild Rose Republic, hello, says Marxipad. Yes, because I said feminine hygiene product, Mark Carney, Marxipad.
And thank you for everybody that has been leaving comments. It's one of those shows we just can't get to every comment. Again, if you want to leave a super chat, we do stop the show and read that. Usually we get to all the comments, but I have a feeling today we're just not going to be able to.
I'm going to try though. And it does seem like we have a troll. Hold on, because the stream might have died. No.
The troll took down our stream.
Hopefully not. Let me see if it does work. Yeah, it does work. Ron Kelland, I think that might be the troll, says, what's an urban commie? Communist that lives in urban areas that has gotten used to being under communist
An urban commie is an NDP voter and a Liberal voter under Carney.
Sam says, Gunsonized area in the summer. Maybe it's really cold there. James B says, yeah, carbon capture, the carbon, what?
But we're going to go into Alberta and
yeah, carbon capture, the carbon out of hydrocarbons, kind of like taking the hydration out of water.
Yeah.
FFS. Exactly.
Well, and they're taking the nutrition out of food. Every single year, there's less and less nutrition in actual food.
Yes. But okay, apparently now we have to move on to Alberta's Canada, or just more reasons for Alberta to become independent. Let's go.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And starting with kind of the continuation of what we were just talking about, Wealthmuth says, quote, the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia has struck down the ridiculous woods ban, that absurd $29,000 fine for simply going into the woods, thrown out.
And this is huge. If you weren't following this story, I know a lot of people in Alberta were. And if you're watching our show, we've been following this every step of the way. This is big. This is how you push back against the federal government. And more people need to do things like this, not just with the woods ban, but with other things Carney's going to try to bring in under a majority government.
Mm-hmm.
Within the last hour, we learned the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia has struck down the province's 2025 ban on going into the woods. The decision follows a constitutional challenge by Jeffrey Evely, who was fined nearly $29,000 for walking in the forest during the ban. In the ruling, the court emphasized while governments may act in response to emergencies, they must consider the impact of their decisions on charter rights. The court ruled the ban was overly broad. It was also lacking in clarity.
And fantastic. Thank you to him again for doing this.
For standing up.
And it does show even ideological courts once in a while can rule the right way.
But in BC, Western Standard says, quote, according to Fletcher, BC's new final treaties are anything but, and private landowners will pay the price for decades.
Yeah, they need to get David Eby out of there, and they need to get him out of there now. They need to have an election within all British Columbia. The Conservatives are polling really high. Even once they're in there, I just don't know what's going to happen here. It's a disaster what BC is turning into right now.
And this is what happens when, through ideology, you allow special interests to creep in and special benefits to creep in. And this can be on any minority group or minority issue that they latch onto and then use.
Oh,
I'm not
hold on.
saying
It doesn't have to be a minority, because a majority population that is considered a specialty group or class are women as well.
yes, and here in Mexico, they're going through that route.
And they'll build hate speech laws and compelled speech laws on top of that specialty group or class. So it could actually be a majority in some cases.
Yeah, and currently in Mexico, you cannot criticize a female politician because you'll get in trouble, which is exactly what in a democracy you should be allowed to do.
Well, and in Brazil, if you correct a female in a business meeting, you can be arrested for it, which is what absolutely
It's
insane.
insane, but
people don't
came out.
realize these laws are global at this point.
and that they're using different specialty groups or minority groups, quote unquote, to go through them and to be able to impose them. But again, it's not going against the First Nations themselves and the people of the First Nations and the people within the tribes, but the chiefs that are almost being allowed to continue to be used for other people's benefit as well, unfortunately. Speaking of BC, Dallas Brody says, quote, both treaty acts introduced this week by the BC NDP are now being challenged by other bands claiming the same territory. The reconciliation agenda has become a performative mess, and it needs to stop.
Well, once they've recognized one band, they're just going to expand it and give more territory to other bands as well. And then they're going to have overlapping claims. Oh, whoa,
But before
wow.
then.
1 second. We got a couple of super chats, so we'll read both
I'm
of those.
going right after.
Thank you, Glenn Gunn.
Glenn Gunn, thank you so much. Says, for $2, says, you make me smile. Thank you. You make us smile back. So thank you.
Everybody that tunes in, because we're a very small station, so the fact that we do have so many viewers, are a very small channel, it really does make it feel like Alberta independence is not only possible, but is going to happen.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Glenn Gunn. And I know Glenn Gunn is almost always here, and I really...
Oh, you did give 2 of them.
I know. I read them both. You make us smile too. And he's always here in the conversation as well, which is very invaluable, as I say, because the comments are the best part, at least for me, for the stream. But now going back to
and
what's happening in BC.
Dallas Brody's one of the only politicians within British Columbia that has power that is pushing back against this. She is absolutely fantastic. Jeff Rath was talking about her the other day. He met her, absolutely loves her. She has that Albertan spirit, even though she's in BC, and she's fighting a very uphill battle here. I don't know if it's a winning battle. I don't think it is. That's why we left Canada. That's why we left BC. I think Alberta independence is the way to fix it. Now, not to fix BC, but she's welcome to come to Alberta.
I can't help but agree with a commenter from the other day online who said the BC government is an insane asylum and Dallas Brody is the only doctor on site. That is how it feels over here. BC's reconciliation agenda is like a bad joke. The NDP introduced 2 bills this week that brought forward 2 new treaties in British Columbia, one for the Comox Band and one for the Kitselis Band. Now, before the ink is even dried on those, several other First Nations have challenged the validity of those treaties and have demanded that both of them be paused so that they can advance their claims over the same lands. The first treaty was for the Comox Band.
And
you know,
pause it
the
real
band
quick.
that just...
And just imagine how much has been given out for the mass grave hoax. We're talking tens of billions of dollars to all kinds of tribes. Their legal teams are going to be massive, and that's why they're winning a lot of these court battles. And then they have the NDP ready to back it up and take what I'm going to guess are backroom deals of big amounts of cash.
But I will also say, if people... When people talk about this issue, if they allow, and we continue to see this, if they allow that their self-imposed, but also, I would say federally or ideologically imposed white guilt gets the best of them to think that this is actually beneficial also for the First Nations, it is not. They are also being used, and I think it's very important to realize that. And if you truly care, if the people truly care, they would be out there saying, hey, a lot of these things are being used for different purposes by different entities as well that is not even beneficial to the First Nations peoples themselves. Yes, the chiefs, some of them maybe get some benefits, but in general, this is not even good for the people themselves.
And we're going to play most of this because this is a crucially important topic. People are acting like, oh, the Conservatives are now pushing back because their polling numbers are going up. Treaties are continuing to go through at a massive rate right now.
Hold on, let me break for a little bit. Michael Drader, thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying, so no telling a woman in politics, hey, nice rack. No, no, you can't say that, but you can also not point out the corrupt connections that they have, because a person got in trouble for doing just that on X, and then she had to apologize for 30 days on end. Again, it was a woman criticizing another woman. She was a politician, and she had to apologize and go to special re-education classes on gender.
Well, not even nice rack. You can't, literally, you're not allowed to disagree with a woman
Brazil.
in a business meeting or in a political sense. If you do, you can be arrested. That's how far gone a lot of these countries are. And they set the precedent in these little countries, and nobody's paying attention. And then they take them to first world nations like the US, like the Canada. And they're like, oh no, it's already been done. This is a normal thing that's happening.
Exactly. So
And it's not normal.
it's insane. But continuing on with Dallas Brody.
Just kicked out over 100 seniors from their trailer park. The Comox Treaty is now being challenged by the Waitscreen First Nation, and it says that this bill will have serious impacts on the core territory of the Waitscreen First Nation. The second treaty for the
You are
Kitsalis
fine.
First Nation
You're
has
fine.
been challenged by two groups. One is called the Nine Allied Tribes, and then another is called the Lax-Kwal'alams Band. They are now demanding that this treaty also be paused, and they claim that the territory granted under this Kitsalis Treaty has granted over 90% of the land that they
Pause
claim.
it.
We were told this
No, go
week in the
back. My God. They're taking everything. And they didn't have to fire a bullet to do it.
No,
Well,
the UN is able to just move in there.
our friends that bought a
Because
house,
of
our friends that bought a house, their house
Yeah.
is in that region.
Now
Everything's within that region
now
now.
it's been taken over. It hadn't up to this map.
We were told this week in the legislature that these treaties have taken over 30 years of hard work, grueling work by treaty commissioners who traveled the province away from their families, children, homes, lives, hobbies, their gardens, in order to reach these incredible conclusions. But how is it in the course of 30 years, these gifted treaty commissioners forgot to take into account that, for example, 90% of the land they're giving to the Kitsalis Band or the maybe it was the Comox Band, actually is claimed by another band? Does the left hand not know what the right hand is doing? Or is this whole thing a performative mess? Let's be clear.
Pause
I am
it.
not trying to say
It's not a performative mess. They know exactly what they want to do. They want to have overlapping treaties on the same land. So if somebody challenges that and they challenge one band, well, the other band still has control of that. So then they have to challenge another one. And it's going to cost millions of dollars to overturn any of that, even if you're able to do it. It's going to make it nearly impossible to overturn these treaties. They want overlapping territory.
that more work on this would have made a big difference. What I'm trying to say is that this whole thing is rubbish. It's absolute nonsense to think all of this money can continue to be paid towards this reconciliation industry, all of these treaties supposedly being reached.
Okay,
And
we can leave
that
it
it's-
there. And let's go into, we have two more stories in this section, and then we'll go to some comments before we go to Alberta and the world.
And again, this has been all allowed and put forth through the whole Marxist dichotomy. And I know people hate it when people use that word, but through the Marxist dichotomy of oppressor oppressed, and getting Canadians, number one, to have immense guilt and imposing it through also the erasure of history, but at the same time into the oppressed mentality of First Nations as well, and not allowing them to see that this is not on their benefit. It's on the benefit of others and other people. Other nations, I will say too. CTV News says, Canada falling behind in race to attract the best, brightest students. Universities Canada CEO says. Of course.
Yeah.
Who would want to be in Canada right now if you're young?
We already know this, but the fact that this is getting into mainstream media now, we also see the other narrative that they want to stop people from leaving Canada, especially students that immigrated for education purposes. They want them to stay in Canada because as soon as they get that education, they're leaving to the States. You don't keep them in Canada by telling them $500,000 to leave the country or whatever other ridiculous policy they want. They're floating these kind of ideas now and they want to normalize them.
But again, they don't want to mention what the actual problem is and why Canada is failing to retain or even attract those best and brightest students and who's coming instead as well. Because it's not like immigration numbers are going down. They're just realizing that there's a brain drain both internally in Canada, but also not even wanting to go to Canada.
Yeah. And before we go to the last story in this section, if you can hit the like button, if we can get to 100 likes, it doubles our view count the next day. YouTube really does push us out.
Thank you. Northern Perspective says, quote,
No, thank you, Nat.
Says, this is wild. CBC's Rosemary Barton started out celebrating Mark Carney's majority. Then a reporter called him autocratic live on air. Watch what happens when he backs it up with receipts.
Well, and it's the second half of this I'm actually going to talk about, which we'll talk about it when it gets there.
Okay.
By-elections won and a majority secured. The Prime Minister says the Liberals are committed to collaboration.
Well, I'm amused to hear that we're into a new era of collaboration now that they've got a majority. This is a government and a Prime Minister with an autocratic streak a mile wide. They brought in legislation, Henry VIII Acts that allow ministers to rewrite legislation unilaterally. They brought in legislation that allowed the police to demand subscriber info from internet service providers without a warrant. Legislation that would allow or deny asylum claimants the right to an independent hearing. And that was with a minority. When you see the Prime Minister expressing disdain for the way in which the opposition members have been behaving themselves in committee, that they haven't quite been behaving the way he would like them to, but contented now that he'll be able to make them behave in the way that he would like to, I don't see a lot of signs of a collaborative spirit there.
Well, I mean, okay, Althea, to that point, I mean, I view the Prime Minister's comments there as being, this is a serious time.
It's so strange to me because a lot of the policies he's even pointing out about privacy, censorship, these were traditional liberal values. They've really gone so far progressive. They don't know where they came from.
To do serious work and not, talk about silly things and become sort of clip farms for social media. Maybe that is disdain. I don't know as Andrew characterizes it, but it also seemed to me perhaps something that Canadians might want to see.
And here the true bias is on full display for CBC. When Rosemary Barton hears this condemnation and criticism.
We're going to listen to his comments, but this is what I want to say. It's time for national content creators to get behind Alberta independence. What are you going to complain about? What Mark Carney's doing in a majority government for the next 3 years? He's going to destroy Canada. We all know it at this point. Alberta independence is hitting the reset and will inspire other provinces to do the same. Like, I see a lot of these channels, and I'm not trying to get on Northern perspective here. I watch them quite frequently, but there's other channels as well that they were talking about polling the other day, that the polling's rigged, and this is after the majority government already happened. Are we going to
everything is rigged?
Are we going to complain about polling for 3 years, or are we going to try to make a real change, take off the gloves, which Pierre Poilievre wouldn't do, and vote for Alberta independence at this point?
Carney government actually has done. And then tries to say, well, blah, 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 blah. Well, I just view it as, he doesn't like the click farming, and he doesn't like, what's going on in committee. And I think lots of Canadians like that. And this is the CBC trying to say, Canadians, this is what you should think. We've said this before. If any of you, I know a lot of you don't, but if any of you end up watching mainstream media, whenever they say, Canadians don't like this, or Canadians want this, or Canadians think this, they're not telling people actually what Canadians think. They're telling Canadians what to think.
Yeah, and I really hope national conservative media gets behind Alberta independence. I really hope that Poilievre doesn't come after Alberta independence and then taps these content creators on the shoulder to go against it, because all the first principles, all these national conservative content creators are talking about and complaining about, but can't do anything about for the next 3 years because of the Carney majority government, they can do through Alberta independence.
And I do know there is a troll in the chat, and I'm still doubting if I should acknowledge it or not. But
well, we have one more section, and that's Alberta and the World before we go to RUMBLE. Let's read a few comments, and if you want to read some of his, maybe we can address some of his complaints.
There's way too many. The thing is, I want to say hi to Justin GP, and because of the troll, it went up way too high up, so I couldn't say it. But hello, Justin GP. Thank you so much for being here. Says hello, Nat and Guy, and everyone else. Hello, and thank you for being here. Hold on. Wild Rose Republic says, if I owe Indigenous people because of their ancestors, then Canada owes me because my family was one of the first here and built the country over 10 generations.
Nobody owes anybody anything,
Exactly.
and that's what needs to be said here. There needs to be no specialty groups or classes, but that's just my opinion, I guess.
And Ron Kellen, the troll, I will acknowledge you, says, First Nations bashing gonna happen. Not bashing, just talking about things openly and honestly without having to self-impose a white guilt that the federal government wants you to clearly have.
And this isn't First Nations bashing. This is happening all over the world right now. And South America, Central America, it's going all over in Europe as well. Even in it's absolutely insane. The UN has a coordinated plan here, and it's being implemented in British Columbia first.
It's the First Nations being used once again, I would even say. And if people cannot realize that and cannot actually advocate for the people themselves and not the chiefs that want to go along with this, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well, it's Alberta independence and Alberta in general is in a very good place because all that land was already ceded. So that's a big hurdle that is out of their way that other provinces still have lying in front of them.
James B says, the very minute, and again, I can't show these on screen because they went way too fast. The very minute Carney starts talking carbon anything, the oil companies will shut down in those talks, cannot afford to hike prices before trying to sell.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then the troll, eventually I might block him. But again, we acknowledge free speech. But if it gets too much for the regular chat to be read and for the regular conversations to be had, then the person goes away. We have a lot of time.
I know. Let's do 4 more comments. And we can try to read a lot of comments after Alberta and the World before we go to RU and BLA.
And let me find a good one and then I'll go back up. Troglodyte says, unreasonable governance? Yep, that's Canada. Alba Twitch says, can't enter the King's Woods, claim your sovereignty. No King's protest. I'm telling you, you should reclaim the No King's badge and take it as the Alberta Independence news slogan.
With that wood story, we covered that in depth, and it was shocking. Certain specialty groups and classes were allowed in the woods, and I'm not even talking about First Nations here. LGBTQ was allowed in the woods to do what they wanted, and it just wasn't regular Canadian citizens. There was rules for thee and then rules for me.
Exactly.
Oh, we had
and Sam, thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying peace, love, and Alberta independence. Happy weekend. Thank you and happy weekend. Okay, Ron, I won't block you, but have actual products and conversations, or you're just interrupting and disturbing everybody else. This is my teacher coming out and talking. If you're not going to behave, then you get consequences. Sorry if you've never gotten them in your life before. Okay, let's go into Alberta and the World, and then I'll continue reading.
You see what I put up with every day.
Okay, and
we're going to continue our coverage here of what's going on in Ireland because it is important.
Yes. Starting with Liz Churchill saying, quote, Ireland just flipped the script. Children are waving Irish flags as tractors roll through the streets. Young and old united, you pissed off the wrong people. The treasonous government's betrayal has awakened every generation. Take Ireland back now.
Yeah, and it's important that these kind of images are getting out because it's hard for the government to build a narrative at this point.
Again, they already tried to say that the tricolor flag or the Irish flag was a racist symbol. So that's where we're at.
White blank page and swelling
I like her coat.
Well, and what they have is a problem with legal immigration in Ireland. I follow Irish politics really closely, and it's not illegal immigration that's been pushed upon them. It's actual legal immigration. And it's shocking to me. None of these immigrants are out in the streets protesting with the traditional citizens. This would have been a real opportunity.
The native citizens.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into the second post here.
The Liberal IE says, Ireland, if you're following from outside Ireland, please show the UK, Europe, and the USA that the Irish are fighting back, fighting for their livelihoods, fighting for their family, their friends, their country. This is just the beginning. Follow and share. And again, what's happening in Ireland did start as part of the carbon tax protest and what was going on with the oil price hikes, but it's become a nationwide movement of people realizing what the government has continued to impose on them
for the last decade
without their consent.
And I will say this, leave it at the top there. It's up to us, channels like ours, small channels in the United States and Canada or in Mexico that don't have EU censorship right now. People in Ireland are having a tough time talking about this issue. Also the grape gangs, a lot of other issues that are happening in the EU. A lot of content creators from over there literally have had tear-filled pleas on social media saying, can you talk about the issues here? Because our government won't talk about them and we don't know how to make a change. And this is why I've been giving so much coverage to these Irish protests, as well as they have a real through line to what happened with the Canadian truckers, with the Freedom Convoy, and what's happening in Alberta.
Exactly. And you want to put me to play?
You can play it real quick. And they keep coming, which is fantastic because the military started towing away a lot of these vehicles. The government thought it was going to die at that point, and a lot of people came out of their houses and they got mass support from the public, which allowed this to continue. I think they're on day 12 right now, and keep going until they break the government's back. And the government has to meet their demands, not just for oil and fuel prices, but everything the government has been overstepping for the last decade.
Or at least speak to them, because again, they had told them that they were going to have negotiations and talk, and then they sat them off at another table like they were kids at a Christmas party.
Yeah.
Which is not the way you treat your citizens.
Okay, let's go into, we have two more stories here.
Thanks. Nick Sorter says, quote, absolutely incredible. After President Trump announced Iran agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that the UK and France are leading a military mission to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
They don't know what to do, and the strait keeps reopening and then closing, and then reopening and then closing. It's not open again. It actually closed since I grabbed the story. I meant to take this story down, but it's so back and forth. This is putting a lot of these countries in a very weird predicament. They want to say they're helping when it's open and they don't actually have to do anything. And then now that it's closed again, it's going to be interesting if they continue to go over there.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. We just had a very productive meeting, bringing together 49 countries around a very simple message and proposition that the world needs the Strait of Hormuz fully open, because that is how we keep prices down for our people and stop the global economic damage.
Pause
So
it.
we've all
You want
agreed
to
with
keep
real-
prices down for your people? You have a 60% tax. I'm talking about the EU here. 60%, 60 cents of every dollar is in taxes. Take that off if you want to lower fuel prices. Yeah, you can go to the Strait of Hormuz and help out over there as well. But you have control over a lot of what the price is actually dictated right now.
Or maybe become self-reliant again instead of having to rely on the global economy you helped form, and that now if one thing gets pushed, then everything crumbles to the ground and you have no way to face your people once everything goes down the toilet.
Well, it's a conservative way of thinking that every country should be self-sustaining to a large majority of everything they have in their country. And then when they do have international or global trade, it just goes on to strengthen each country and each alliance. You don't want to rely on purely global trade. So when things start breaking down globally, your people are the one that suffers. You can leave it there though.
Okay.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we don't want to see
because
this
they
too.
keep opening it and closing it. Will the EU actually go over there? They have 6 weeks of jet fuel left. So.
Now I can read your comments and actually have quite a bit of time. So.
Oh no, we had one more. Did you grab the Jasmine Lane one?
Oh yes, I did. Hold on. Sorry. I thought it was 3 for RU and BLE, but no, it was 2. Let's watch this from Merit Styles, but coming through Jasmine Lane. There's no comment.
Researchers did an experiment. 400 people, same moment, same grocery store, same items. Some paid $4.69 for eggs, some paid $4.28. Wheat thins, 4 different prices. Peanut butter, 3 different prices. An algorithm decided who pays more. So how did they decide who pays what? It's watching everything you do. What you search for, what you browse online, what you buy, when you buy it. It builds a profile and then it calculates what's the most this person will pay. It's called surveillance pricing. Corporations using your data to charge you the maximum amount they think you'll pay. Here's how they did it. Companies like Instacart bought a firm called Eversight. Every time you buy canola oil, they're testing. Can we charge you 10 cents more, 20 cents more? What's the maximum before you notice? They call it AI for everyday price performance. And they promise grocery stores 2 to 5% profit increases. Translation, they squeeze millions of dollars out of you, 1 bag of beans at a time. And it's not just online. Walmart is lobbying to expand surveillance pricing to physical stores. Electronic shelf labels with digital price tags. Tech giants want you to believe you can opt out of that, but you can't opt out of groceries. And they know that. And look, this isn't just about groceries. An Uber driver analyzed 159 identical rides. Same route, same driver, same car. Some passengers paid $80, others $250. Your rent? Landlords are already doing this. The Competition Bureau investigated. Restaurants, flights, hotels, if it can track you, it can charge you more. Wapkanu's NDP government saw this coming, so they banned it.
Here in Manitoba, we've got a bill to ban predatory pricing.
first province in Canada. And what's Doug Ford doing about any of this?
Is this
I
something
absolutely hate the guy from Manitoba, by the way, but okay. But this is a fantastic video and put it in a very easy to understand way because this is coming and it's coming to one country for sure. And that is going to be Canada because they are primed for this.
They already have electronic labels.
They're very cooperative population and that's why they're going to be targeting Canada specifically.
And again, before we left, they already had these electronic labels in Vancouver.
and your government would be open to banning here in Ontario?
No.
I'm introducing a motion to ban predatory pricing in Ontario. Doug Ford should put his money where his mouth is and protect you from the American tech giants and corporations that are ripping you off. Go to this link and tell your MPT to vote yes to ban predatory pricing.
And again, there can be common sense things coming out of even the NDP, for example. But I think it is time just for, in general, for not just Canadians, but everybody to realize what is being done right under your nose.
Well, this is the thing that's going to happen with this, I think. I could see Mark Carney step in and say, no predatory prices on this, and then just keep increasing government taxes and government regulation. So they're going to get their pound of flesh one way or another. Okay, we can go to comments now. We can read quite a few comments before we go to RUMBLE. We only have 2 stories over there tonight, so.
Darryl Robinson says, and again, we're going back to the whole, how it works. What was I saying?
You were saying Darryl Robinson.
I know, hold on. They're electoral maps. There we go. That was what.
Electoral maps.
Electoral maps, sorry. Gerald Robinson says, then I will have to say, claiming UCP gerrymandering when the NDP wanting to drop 2 rural seats and give them to urbans in NDP areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for clearing that up as well. Yeah, I'm sure the NDP wants more and more people in cities. That's how they got Vancouver. That's how they got their foothold in Calgary.
Hold on. Because I read some of those already.
Okay, just go down to the bottom and read, or we can go to RUMBLE. If
James B says, when Alberta leaves, things will be a lot better. Yes, they will.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we do the show 6 days a week live. And we're hopefully next week going to ramp up our content for edited videos more.
Yes.
We want to get to that group that is kind of on the fence.
Troglodyte says, unreasonable governance. Yep, that's Canada. And Albert Twitch says, you're the only one whining around here. Ron is the troll, saying that everybody's whining that Alberta gets mistreated. James B says, we're so happy that people like you do not get to vote on this from Ontario. Your comments regarding this are 100% irrelevant. Very true. And Troglodyte says, short bus trolling, window liquor. Hold on. Darryl Robinson says, RBC chief executive says too much of Canada's economic...
Well, you can't be too hard on him. I mean, he might be watching the show and wearing his helmet, so maybe he can't hear us properly.
Darryl Robinson says, RBC chief executive says too much of Canada's economy put under bubble wrap. Even our banks are speaking out. And the ones that went to China, yeah, RBC went to China too. Albert Twitch said, no, hold on.
It's going to be interesting what happens when Alberta does get its independence, because you're really going to want to look at the banking system and how that is arranged. You don't want, maybe different banks for different sectors could be a good idea. So if there's a banking collapse in one sector, it doesn't corrupt the entire system. And then it's hard for them to justify a bailout at that point as well.
Troglodyte says, if Alberta leaves to the troll, you might not be able to get your subsidy bucks. I get why you're anxious. Yeah, many people are very anxious about that. Hold on. And then he says, I'm just here as an observer. Well, watch and learn.
Observe Alberta independence in action.
Watch Alberta leave, exactly. Hold on. Sam says, now a proud Calgarian. Good.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes. And Troglodyte says, things within Alberta will be awesome. Yes, exactly. And Alberta, hold on. Because now I read those as well. Troglodyte says, weird, First Nations wants traditional land, etc., but with our first world technology.
Well, the issue is they've been given billions of dollars, and the water management from the elites in that tribes is absolutely corrupt, and it's devastating the people within those tribes. Water's trucked into almost every single reserve within Canada.
Oh, and Ron Kellen says, I'm a First Nation, by the way. I'm here listening for the hate for us. There's no hate. We're literally saying the people are being taken advantage of by those few at the top. And if you're one of those people that are being taken advantage of, you should be doing something about it too.
Well, it's fine. Everybody's going to get a vote. So a lot of people within the First Nations tribes are going to vote for independence, and they've said so on the show. Not everybody is going to vote for independence, and I'm aware of that. But I'm actually shocked that so many First Nations are on the side of Alberta independence at this point.
Ron also says, native bashing again, couldn't see that coming. Where are we? We're literally saying we want the First Nations people and the actual tribes people to stand up for themselves to those that are at the top and are taking advantage of them and signing deals in their name.
Listen, the people in Alberta are going to have to break the federal government here by declaring their independence. But the First Nations tribal members have a similar thing they're going to have to do with the own elites in their tribes. We've seen the videos of a lot of the reservations within Alberta, and it's a sad state. Not all of them, but a lot of the elites in these tribes have kept the money for themselves, and it hasn't worked its way down to the members.
Exactly. Albert Twitch says, literally nothing negative was said about natives. And I concur because I don't think I have said anything negative about it. Glenn Gunn says, I have no time for First Nations as an issue that don't care for themselves. And that's another way of looking at it, exactly. Troglodyte says, we abuse First Nations by educating them. Had we not, that would be abuse too.
Okay, let's go 3 more comments, and then we're going to go...
We have quite a bit of time still. We have 15 minutes because there are a lot more comments after that. I just wanted to get through that section to kind of respond as well.
Okay.
Because again, I didn't ban him, but if he continues to act like a petulant child, then I will.
Quit demeaning him or quit talking down to him. Just ignore him. He's living in your head rent free, Nat. Come on now.
Glenn Gunn says, have you watched Yellowstone? I can't be that far off. Ottawa knows that.
Yeah, Yellowstone was absolutely fantastic, but it got bad as it kept going on and on. It started out very strong when it had, oh God, what's his name again? Kevin Costner.
Yes.
When Kevin Costner was in it.
It turned a little bit woke at the end, and that's when I kind of stopped watching it. A2.0 says, pay Albertans to have kids. And this is one policy issue and even constitution issue that I continue to bring up. We have been trying to solve the population collapse with immigration, but we haven't seen almost anybody speak about the lack of opportunities that young Albertans in this case have or don't have to be able to even think about having children and repopulating Alberta that way. And the incentives that should be put forth, especially within an independent Alberta, that would be able to give even more opportunities and more incentives to young people to look to their future and to their legacy as well. Right now, they can't even think about that.
We need to be promoting people to get married younger and to have babies when they're younger. Not to say don't go to school, but maybe you can go to school while you're having a child. You can homeschool, or you can go to school in the second half of life, because your most fertile years and the years are going to be between the ages of 20 and 30. So it's not saying don't go to school. Let's just rearrange the timeline here a little bit and really think about it. We also need to make sure both parents don't have to have a job. One person can stay home, raise kids, do things like that. We don't want the government continuously indoctrinating kids like the federal government is doing right now.
But also, and I think it is I'll bring this comment up because I wanted to go, but also, it is very important to be able to teach young women, but young men too, about their fertility, the way that they could prioritize differently, and the importance of population collapse and what actually happens when population collapse goes through and goes forth. I've made a bunch of videos about it. There's one on this channel. There's 2 on my Spanish channel, and how it has been almost an intentional draw towards the population collapse that we're seeing now and the lack of opportunities for the less population that we have of young people. But yes, fertility for women starts going down a cliff by age 26, and many don't even get told that. I'm sure that if that was drilled into their heads when they were younger, they would probably prioritize differently. I would have.
For decades, we were told, oh, the population's too big by progressive liberals. Oh, we need a smaller population. We need a smaller population. Well, now you're getting it, but you're having to have massive amounts of immigration so you don't have a smaller population. Did you want it or did you not want it? Because I prefer to have a self-replicating population if possible. And that's what things should revolve, and the core of society needs to be family, the working class at the center.
And Justin GP with a great comment here. Thank you for being here. Telling Ron, I'm a card-carrying Metis native, a canvasser, and I'm pro-independence. Take this time you do commenting to platform research on Alberta independence instead. Very well said, Justin GP. Thank you for saying that. And Sam says Canada is a mess. Of course. And then we continue to show it, and we continue to give reasons for Alberta to gain its independence. Jess in GP also says, was out canvassing last 2 days and got 75 signatures. Thank you so much. Flag waving today for Grand Prairie, Blue Mile, but back tomorrow. And again, Jess has been one of those canvassers that has been updating us as well a lot about how things are going, and it's invaluable information.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say this. I don't consider myself a native in any way, shape, or form, but I have a card because I'm 136 native. Why did I get that card? Because the Canadian government during the truckers convoy said you're no longer allowed to protest in British Columbia unless you're First Nations. I said, okay, I guess it's time to apply for this card because I was already registered with the band through my grandmother. So I got the card, and then I was allowed to go out with government-approved protest, which was crazy.
So exactly, you can't get any hate because you would be hating on yourself. And again, I'm Mexican, so I'm not even involved in Canada. No, I have nothing to do with Canada. No ancestors there until I went there to study and decided it was too insane for me to stay.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
But I get to have an opinion anyways.
And I just bring that up because the troll keeps trolling. The trolls keep trolling.
Sam says, thanks, Jess. Really super appreciative of your work. Exactly. And thank you to everybody saying thank you to Jess as well. Awesome, Jess, says James B. And thank you for all the hard work.
And Jess really is one of the hardest working canvassers, going to very remote locations and very cold conditions. So
and updating us too. And Glenn Gunn says, Jess, you're a hero of Alberta. And anybody that goes out into very remote locations to talk to the people working there and stays there with the cold and it was watching us as well. So thank you so much, is, I will say, a hero. Anybody that is making that effort to become independent in any way, shape, or form, either talking to a neighbor, getting signatures, or going out to vote on October 19th, is a hero in my eyes. Troglodyte says, you come in here and project on everyone, might just be you, to Ron. And then Ron says, hero of Alberta? Yes. And as I just said, all those people are heroes because they're actually fighting for their freedom, not just complaining on the internet. Kind of like we are, but in a different way. Ron Kellen says, see this talking about is being a victim. You were just doing the same thing again. Petulant child. James B says, block that wrong clown. Again, I'm trying to be as free speechy as I can.
Well, if he comes the next time, we'll let him go this time. But if he comes the next time and he's not respectful, he's going to be banned because it really did distract today.
Yes, Glenn Gunn says, fun fact, my great aunt was named Alberta Gunn. Yeah, you told us a couple years later, Alberta was named. Ottawa said it was named after an Indian princess. Do your homework. Troglodyte says, when you attack trolls, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Justin GP says, Dr. McMillan, how's Ron? Thoughts? Hold on. Oh, yeah. And Ron Collins said, blog me for freedom, for thee, but not for me. For me, but not for thee. I said, if you continue to be a petulant child, you will be blocked. Glenn Gunn says, and yet they do not understand that my vote ends at Thunder Bay.
Well, yeah.
James B says, go Ireland. So proud of what they're doing.
And we all are.
Yes. And it is that the thought and that fighting for freedom and realizing what has been done to you and doing something about it.
And I'm going to say this, like, I was talking about this today in the interview we did before we came on our live, and my thoughts, prayers, and hopes and all my well wishes are with the Irish people. I really like what they're doing, but they waited far too long. The truckers convoy in Canada was really able to slow down the federal government in a lot of ways so a grassroots movement and Alberta independence could grow. Now we have a chance to separate from Canada before Canada turns into Ireland. And if people don't follow Irish politics, their elites within that country are completely corrupt. They go in a completely different direction than the voter base, and there's no option for the voters to even vote for. Then they have the EU as another level of governments lording over them, as well as the UN and a bunch of other NGOs and NGO policies. They view Ireland as a small country, and they want to use it as a framework to see what works and what doesn't for their globalist agenda. And Ireland is really tip of the spear for a lot of this globalist propaganda.
Mm-hmm. Sam says, I drink. Ron has been thinking too much. I think so too. And Ron says, seriously, if you guys put up a fair talking point, I wouldn't troll you, but being the endless victim of nothing makes it easy for my decision.
Well,
that is very funny coming from the past comments you've just put on.
The fair talking point is there is a legal path towards independence within Canada for provinces. So for you to think that we shouldn't have the vote to at least vote on it is absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Dale Robinson says Ron Carney's asking for his attack doc bag. Something he'll get him back.
Maybe that's maybe his name's not Ron. Maybe his name's Jason Kinney.
Ron or Jason Kenney says this right-wing MAGA style of politics is alarming. Too much freedom for you, I guess. Too much independence.
Call me a racist and call me some more names. That's like 10 years ago in politics. And because I not only follow Canadian politics, I follow a lot of American politics as well. That shit doesn't work anymore.
Sam says Nat's eyes actually rolled back listening to Starmer. Too funny. There's no other way to react. I'm sorry to that troll douche.
Ron's the kind of guy that's going to bring a Nazi flag and a CBC camera guy to Alberta.
Starmer.
Oh, yeah.
Pure Starmer. Yes, of course, my eyes are going to roll back. Ron Gillen also says, fair enough, put up a good argument, and I'll listen respectfully. We've done what? This is the 32nd live show we've done about Alberta independence, so you can go back and watch them all.
I don't even have to put up arguments about Alberta. I have confidently throughout the show, but we also talked about Canadian politics. Why don't you put up an argument to defend all that bullshit that we just talked today about on the show for like an hour and a half that Carney's doing? There's no way to defend that. And what the vote is does Alberta want to be independent, or do they want to be Carney's lapdog going off the cliff with him economically? And the answer is easy. It's independence.
And even what the First Nation chiefs are doing to their own people as well. I mean, it's almost a parallel as to what Canada is doing to its citizens too. It's they come from the same playbook. So there. Justin GP says, thoughts on some mantles of leadership? Asking Ron. Sam says, Albertans are always friendly and fair until you break into their homes. As they should be. James B says, one of the very good few things old Sunken Kinyu has done. Glenn Gunn says, be my age and know a great chief, Ray Mistiung, famous Chuck Wagon
I'm not
driver.
understanding you, Nat. You're going to have to read a little bit more clearly.
I didn't understand either. Sam says, First Nations throw some great rodeos, massive stampede contributors.
Yeah.
And again, we're not bashing. We're actually trying to say also stand up for your freedom too. Republic of Alberta says 42 plus million people live in Canada.
Here's the thing. Albertans have grievances, and all we want is a vote, and we want democracy. And even Danielle Smith is making that clear. And she's a national politician. And thank God she is making that clear that Albertans have grievances. They just want democracy to work itself out. On a national level, democracy isn't working itself out. It's a bunch of floor crossers, and national conservatives are completely disenfranchised at this point. If it was the opposite way around, Ron, I don't know where you're from, maybe Ottawa, and it was conservatives that had complete control and you were disenfranchised, and there was an independence movement for liberals within Ottawa, would you want us to not allow you to have democracy?
Exactly. Republic of Alberta says 42 plus million people live in Canada. 10% of the population becoming independent shouldn't affect anything except when they are the money pit for the rest of Canada and the ones that are upholding the rest of Canada while they don't get almost any benefit from doing it.
Yeah, they're the money pit, but they're also the doormat. And it's strange how Canada is taking all their money and then using them as a doormat. And they've been doing that for the last 100 years. And if Ron's not aware, it's been going on since 1905. Every couple of generations, this thing flares up within Alberta. And right now, it's looking like it's going to come to a head.
Mm-hmm. Ron says, tribes is a colonizer term. First Nations, please. I do not bend to compelled speech. So no, thank you.
No, Ron called me a racist and a colonizer. I better stop the show now.
Well, you're a native too. Sean says,
a native colonizer.
Sean says, can't we all agree those chiefs are snazzy dressers? I guess we can all agree on that. Justin GP says, thanks so much, Nat and Guy. You work very hard with all your informative videos. This is another reason they're honorary Albertan. Thank you so much. And it means a lot coming from Jess as well.
Yeah.
Darla Robinson says, Alberta patriots support our Indigenous and our independence. All Albertans will be prosperous and free. And that's the thing. You have the opportunity to all come up as Alberta becomes independent because of the prosperity that can be had through getting rid of the federal impositions and the federal restrictions on the actual productivity you could be having, and everybody would benefit from it. Sean says, Canada wasn't colonized. The woke dialectical materialist, Gnostic victim, victimizer dynamic doesn't apply. And I completely agree with you, Sean.
Too academic for me there, Sean.
I got it. Exactly.
She's much more academic than I am.
Sam says, one of my best friends for decades is a member of the Comox tribe. OMG, do we laugh when we get together? And I don't get this one from Ron. I fear a Gaza-style treatment. Okay, you keep fearing that and work out a plan to escape. Republic of Alberta says Alberta's birth rate is perfectly healthy. Our median age is 38 years old. The benefits need to go to Alberta's youth instead of migrants.
Well, if he's talking about Gaza-style treatment, maybe he's talking about the Canadian federal government trying to stop Alberta from an independence vote militarily. And if that's the case, we got a friend to our south that will back our play. So I'd love to see Carney try to bring the military in there and do something about it.
Sam says, hate to tell you, but take a trip to a school bus or class. Alberta's youth are migrants. Wake up, dude. 82.0 says, pay Albertans to have kids. I mean, there are countries that have tried to switch their demographics and done so not super successfully, but at least it's a start to be able to give the opportunities to young people to even think about being able to have kids. I don't know about
paying Albertans to have kids. There's better ways to do it because what happened in the States is a welfare program. Now you have intergenerational welfare programs where they are paid to have kids, and it's backfired on a lot of communities. So just making sure there's very high paying jobs for high working individuals. So only one individual has to work and the other can stay home, raise kids, have kids, and then focus on their own education in case they want to start a home business or do something else after the kids are out of the house. I think that's a better strategy. Or if there is a tax system, which I'm hoping within Alberta, the tax system is revolving around corporations and not individuals. But if there is, say, a 10% flat tax on everybody, no tax if you have 3 kids or more.
And Sam says, just take the stress off of them so they can. Exactly. And I do fully agree with that point. And again, with the education of letting all young people know, but particularly women, what the actual issues they might have trying to have children later on, and ways to shift the paradigm of how they even plan for the future.
Listen,
and fertility education too.
If you look at government propaganda in the Western world, it's all boss girl, go to school at a young age. There's heavy propaganda in every single context. Use that same propaganda wing to say family first, working class first, have a family. Children are a good thing. Like, what are the moral foundations of our society? These are the things we should be pushing out. The Western society for well over 20 years now has been pushing out the opposite.
And that's the thing. Exactly.
Exactly.
Like thank you for tonight. Oh, I said it.
Thank you everybody for that has been tuning in on Saturdays, because we expanded into Saturdays, and a lot of viewers have been coming out and supporting. So
Ron says, ban a First Nation, that's a sign of things to come for us in an independent Alberta. No, you all just get to have equal rights and be able to be treated all equally. What actual equality means. And we didn't ban you, so there you go.
And they have 3 choices, and Keith Wilson put it very clearly. You can stay part of Canada with inside Alberta and travel freely with your native card, just like you travel to the U.S. Number 2, you can have Alberta take over that same treaty you had and actually dull out whatever is in the treaty. Or you can have number 3, which is have a new contract, a modernized contract with a new Albertan government. It's really up to each individual tribe. Albertans aren't trying to decide anything for the First Nations.
And Rumble, don't think I have forgotten about you. I will get to your comments as soon as we head over. There's a lot there too, so thank you so much. But Christu, thank you so much for the $10 Rumble rant.
Thank you.
Saying, hey guy, after you move up here, could you please let me tag along on your first treated card holder out of season elk hunt? Thank you. I don't think you know how to hunt. Do you know?
No, I don't know how to hunt. Surprisingly enough.
Sean says, I will go guy Californian, but so am I. Call not to go. Okay, call guy not to go California. But Steve Rose says, thank you, Nat, and guy, hello chat. Hello, thank you for being here. Glenn Gunn says, go Ireland. Yes, go Ireland.
Absolutely.
Freedom.
And I'm glad people within Alberta and primarily within Alberta now are starting to stand up and speak for the Irish people, because they're facing massive censorship over there. Like, we can talk about it and people in Canada can listen to what we're saying. But in Ireland, a lot of times when they're putting out videos, they're being banned and stuff like this. So
yes, Dal Robinson says, not a guy, another great show. Thank you. And says, hit the like button, everyone. Yeah, we want to try to get to 100 likes because it really does help the show afterwards and during. So thank you so much. And we're almost at the end.
Okay, well, we made all the comments today, so
Twitch
fantastic.
Says, see you around. Hope you remedy your perpetual sense of victimhood. I hope so too. Okay. Hold on. Sean says, man, I see you guys. I like
Well, he might end up voting for Alberta independence, Ron, there, if he gets off his SSRIs, maybe.
Sam says, bring him on board, Glenn. Glenn Gunn says Albertans give and always will, and will always politically or otherwise. I will not go there on the migrants. They were having a discussion about if people that had just arrived in Alberta should become.
Yeah, and I'll say this: we were.
But I didn't read a bunch of them because they got.
We were interviewing somebody today, and we're saying, Albertans and Canadians are very generous people, but what the federal government is doing, sending billions upon billions of dollars overseas for crazy programs, that's not where we want to see money going. Even within Alberta, if Saskatchewan gets its independence and it has a common sense government, which it should be like Alberta, but they face hard times, I have no problem helping out Saskatchewan to a certain degree to help them get on their feet, but not a perpetual welfare program, which is being given to Ottawa and Quebec. And then they're just giving that out to God knows who all over the globe to have some kind of globalist agenda.
Alba Twitch says, be well, guys. Thanks. Thank you for being here. And Sean says, Ireland, a country built on hating another bigger country. Canada might not want to be like that. Alberta might not want to be like that. And again, not hating, but wanting to move away because the current way that Canada is working is not working for Alberta or Albertans.
Yeah.
But yes, Sean, thank you for being here. I like Sean's comments.
Yeah.
But I like all your comments too. Thank you so much to everybody that joined us on a Saturday and for letting us and for having very insightful debates and discussions as well, even with Ron. I mean, he helped bring up some important points as well. So hopefully he'll behave next time. I didn't ban him yet.
Yeah, thanks, Ron, for bringing some more people over to Alberta Independence. And thank you to Jason Kinney as well. And thank you to Mark Carney, because they're helping out the Alberta Independence movement more than anybody else. Every time they open their mouth or have a new policy, you're just driving more people to independence.
Exactly. But I hope you have, we're going over to RU and PLE. I am not saying goodbye yet. You can find our username down there. It's the same as this channel. Before you go, please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out. There will be a 30-second wait screen, and we'll see you over there. We have 2 stories and then a bunch of comments over there too. So hope to see you there. And again, the show is not over. We're just transferring over to where we're able to talk about more intense things, let's just say. We'll see you over there.
Let's get ready to